started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
He's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Well, off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hockey Podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, the Hockey Podcast, where we currently have set at 100 and Mike Modano of subscribers, and that is the number 90. And you're like, what? Mike Modano wore 9. That's true. He did in Dallas, but he did not in Detroit. He wore number 90. So there we go. That's a little fun fact for you for today. You can also subscribe to our audio wherever you get your audio or where fine podcasts are sold, which are not sold. They're free, but you know what I mean. And like, retweet, share for a number of reasons, not only to win tickets, but because you like our content. We do thank everyone for subscribing, coming in and sharing. If you have any questions during our conversation today, we will chat and get to them as we go. We've got a lot of interesting things to talk about, and we greet you with a hello from Tyler.
Hello. Yes, winter has taken its hold very hard here over the last several days. Traffic chaos on Friday, and now we're heading into an Arctic outflow, so we're all looking forward to that. Not. Although maybe there's a chance at some pond puck here before Christmas, so that is a plus.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
We had a mix of rain and snow here in Burnaby. We had a bit of rain and we had a snow mixed in here. But I think we overall survived. It hasn't, on I think it was Saturday. I think Saturday was one of the first times I went to the Oval to call a Greater Vancouver Canadians game. It was not raining for a while, so that was good. But yeah, it's going to be a messy week all over the BC for weather. We should have a sponsored weather report on the Hockey Podcast.
That's right.
Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, Kev?
I'm good. I may be a little bit super tired. This was the first day in a while. I woke up at 4:30 this morning to do my traffic shift on CKNW and 1040 and Bell as I'm filling in for the next 3 weeks, or Bloomberg 1140 and AM 730. So my face for radio will be on the morning stations in Vancouver for the next 3 weeks. So I'm feeling a little groggy, but I am okay. What's it like to wake up at a normal time?
Relatively normal, I guess. And as far as weather's concerned, we got a snow squall, aka a random quick blizzard the other day. So we have a light dusting of a couple centimeters here in Calgary.
Wow. Interesting. Sean, what's going on?
Yeah, Heidi had to look up the what a squall was. It's just one of those things. It's like blizzard. No, it's not quite that. So, yeah, I'm doing all right. Almost at the end of the semester for school. Just got one more assignment, one more test to do, and then I'll be done. And that's good. Going back to school is different. So, I'm looking forward to having a few not having to think as much.
Yeah. Schools for thinkers. Yeah. It's so, yeah. Anyway,
going back to school in your 30s is like it's mind blowing because you haven't thought about learning like that in way too long, and you feel really old because you're just surrounded by 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and then and then you have to relearn how to learn, which is it's a skill. It's a skill in and itself, and I think people forget about that.
And
Well,
Yeah,
Sean
when I
and
was
I
at
also had to
Smithers
do
there
some.
2 weeks ago in Smithers, I mean, it wasn't that intense, but it was it was a bit odd, kind of doing the classroom thing every day and quizzes and homework. It was strange.
And Sean and I definitely both had the added degree of difficulty of probably math that we weren't necessarily comfortable with either.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there's a statistics class, and I was like, oh, for the love of God, I thought I got away. I'm in radio to get away from math. That's one of the reasons I'm in it. There's no need for math. And now we're all into analytics and sports, and oh my gosh. But you know what? One thing that just threw me for a loop when one of the instructors asked who was alive when September 11th, 2001, and there was like a few in my class that didn't raise their hand, and I went, oh my gosh, that's like that was so weird to me. I was like, you were not alive for one of the most dramatic events of this century, probably now the second most dramatic event of this century as we go through COVID. But yeah, I'm like, wow, gee, like, yeah.
Like, it's one thing to be in junior high like I was, but to not even be born yet, damn.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of dramatic turns of the century moments here, we will get into the Canucks. We'll talk about Jim Rutherford's debut press conference, and the man that thinks he's on a podcast apparently when he speaks. We'll get into Torts' comments that ruffled a bunch of feathers this week. We'll touch on the slide of Alberta as well a little bit later on as well. But I think the news that we need to start with today is involving the Calgary Flames, and they were supposed to play tonight. It was supposed to be a game between the Calgary Flames and Chicago Blackhawks. Devin, who may be running in here, depending on his time, was going to watch the game. They were going to go back to Nashville, and then a game between the Flames and the Maple Leafs as part of the Maple Leafs road trip, and canceled because 6 players are on COVID protocol. One medical staff member member of the training staff, is on protocol. So they have postponed games up to the 16th. And this is now 8 games that have been postponed. And the significance of this is on 2 fronts. I mean, I guess from the Flames perspective, it's probably not the best time to go to have this because you're on a losing streak and you're not going into this in the best mindset. Although maybe that road trip. I mean, but what a lot of people haven't talked about is that travel schedule the Flames have been through is brutal. Been so far in the year, but the bigger issue here is this is becoming significant in terms of sports in North America. The Chicago Bulls have canceled games this week, postponed games. Sorry, I should use the word postpone it. Detroit Pistons and the Raptors game this week has been postponed. 37 players in the NFL have been put on the COVID list today. So I'm just gonna flat out bluntly say this, and just the way that I see it, there is no way in hell that the NHL should be going to the Olympics, and I don't think that they will. I think there is too much. I mean, we'd love to see it, but I think we got to find another way to do this. That's just kind of where I'm coming from. Maybe someone sees it differently, but I can't see it now.
I was probably one of the more optimistic people in terms of the NHL going to the Olympics this upcoming year, but now that this has happened, you're postponing another 3 games. You've got some major questions about the protocols that the players would have to go through. The players are questioning that now. You've got potentially almost like if a player tests positive for COVID while at the Olympics, they have to quarantine for 3 to 5 weeks. Could you imagine if you tested positive if someone tested positive near the end of the tournament, and then they're basically out till the playoffs at minimum, and then they still have to come back and find their legs again, because it's not like they're going to be able to be skating or doing anything like that. So yeah, the more information comes out, the more COVID positive COVID tests that happen, just makes it for me that I don't think it's happening. And it really it's tough, because they should have gone into the Olympics in 2018. They did not going was an absolute just wasn't the right decision, but not going this one because of the pandemic and everything, I think it would be the right decision.
Yeah, I'm definitely less optimistic now that it's going to happen. More so due to the protocol reasons that Sean outlined. I think that's making players quite nervous now. And combine that with the fact that even without the protocols around a quarantine and a positive test, they're not going to get a full Olympic experience going over there. They won't be bringing their families. So this is is a much different deal than what we saw even with Sochi, where you're still going halfway around the world. And then the issue with rescheduling games. Now, I mean, that's an easier one to solve, although because that there's still open holes in the calendar to squeeze games in, and even with an Olympic break, I mean, that affords them some more flexibility if they decide not to use that for going to the Olympic Games themselves. I mean, a lot of NHL buildings have already used dates during that period of time for concerts and NBA games and other things. So it's more to do with the protocols and the consequences of a positive test, I think, that are going to probably kill this thing than this latest outbreak with the Calgary Flames.
Well, it's not only that. The Carolina Hurricanes were one that have a COVID outbreak, and now they have two more players, Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis, who, I hate to point this out to people in Canucks land, he played last night. Sorry, I'm just pointing that out. But I'm only pointing that out because, I mean, this is just the way we are. It's not a good situation here. But they were afraid to bring people over. Even the Boston Bruins on this recent road trip were bringing people over because of the border confusion around the border. And if you test positive, I just think that there's so much confusion even around what's going on with border testing. It's not to get too political here, but I think that has to play a factor in it. That, to me, if I'm the NHL, I'm saying, if I'm the NHL, which Bettman said this is with the players, but if I'm the NHLPA, I'm like,
well, I mean, that's self-serving for Bettman, though. He doesn't want to look like the bad guy that canceled the Olympics. He wants to, at the end of the day, he wants to be able to wash his hands of this and say, well, the players made the choice not to go, or the circumstances did not permit us to go. He's setting himself up to escape much accountability on this thing, which
of course,
be surprised,
and also not look like the bad guy on top of it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And just from the I know we don't want to defend the Toronto Maple Leafs, but looking at their schedule throughout the end of that in January and April, they're pretty much, after that Western road trip, they are pretty much within their own time zone for most of that. So I don't think that they're going to be super happy about taking a trip down to Calgary especially in April, when you're basically in your own time zone for that entire month.
Okay, same side of the border, and what is it, a 3-hour flight from Toronto to Calgary?
Yeah, but
that's
still,
I mean, that's stressful.
If they don't go to the Olympics, they'll be doing makeup games throughout those couple weeks. And
like I say, not a lot of them, though, Sean. There's not Bill Daly did mention on Monday at the border, or Friday, I think, at the Board of Governors. Yeah, Friday, that there's a lot of arena non-availability during that stretch because teams have booked other things. Yes, there is some flexibility there, but it's not like a clear window for all the teams, right?
That and Dubas likes to hear himself complain anyways, because last season on the Amazon series, he decided that he was going to complain about the Canucks and making up those games for for the cameras. So obviously he'll just complain again.
Complaining about scheduling is just like, it's a pastime for people. You can never make anybody, or you make some people happy, but you can't make everybody happy. And then when you have to change the schedule, I think you just invite more complaining. So it is what it is.
And coming from an Eastern side team, an Eastern Conference team, where your all your conference games are in the same time zone, as opposed to Vancouver, Seattle, throw in Dallas, where you're playing in 3 different time zones. You're traveling cross country. Like it's, I honestly, Kev, I have no time for Leafs complaining about having to fly out to Calgary for a one-off.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'm not saying like, I mean, it's going to be a drastic, oh my gosh, this is the most horrendous thing ever. But, I think we haven't, this is a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I think the way that the NHL has generally tried to schedule this year has been fairly smart, trying to keep everything kind of, you have all your East versus West games in the first half of the year for the most part. And then in the second half of the year, it's interconference, interdivision. I think that's been fairly smart. So, I can see the Leafs just kind of not like they shouldn't throw a temper tantrum, but that's, kind of frustrating. You get all that travel out of the way, you're ready for the second half and boom. But, that's life.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, that I think, I don't, I think we've covered that pretty well. At this point, still only 6 players. Brad Shirley did today they are continuing to test. We don't know when the next game will be. We'll have to see about that. But hopefully they are playing very soon and everybody goes well, and best wishes to everyone involved as well. But I also, just on another note, I do think that there's other conversations to be had around, like, just in general here, about how one of the examples that's running into is the e-bug, which is as highly entertaining for us as fans. But as you get into that second, as you're battling for a playoff spot, I think there's going to have to be some looks at how the goaltending roster is handled. I mean, I know it's not optional to have 3 goaltenders. It's not the best or ideal situation, but you have to wonder if some teams are going to want to have that. And even some COVID cap relief, I think, is going to be a debate in the second half of the year as well. I know the St. Louis.
The second point there, I would agree with that. I mean, the e-bug thing, we should point out that the e-bugs, when they actually have had to play, have been playing to somewhat decent levels of success. So I don't know if that's as big a concern for me. But COVID cap relief. I'm surprised we haven't heard more about that already.
I'm surprised they didn't have that in the first place. If these players were following protocols and were vaccinated as per the agreement between the PA and the league, then the team shouldn't be getting dinged for it. Honestly, I don't understand that.
Yeah, and it's been the St. Louis Blues that have been the team that has mostly been at that, but they've been the one that's been sort of affected the most on that. But they're leading the charge there for sure. I'm kind of fascinated. But the best thing, as Dylan says, are resident Anaheim fans. At least the Ducks stay atop the division for one extra night. How about that,
Dylan? I mean, have a look at the games played column. Just have a look at the games played column. Should just point that out.
But they got to win. The other teams have to win those games.
Yeah. But you can't get too comfortable when the games in hand. Every other team in the division has games in hand.
Yeah, for sure.
Just saying.
Fair enough. So I guess now we'll move on to the Canucks here. And Jim Rutherford made his debut in the media. We had Bruce Boudreau. Okay, I'll just refresh my memory. We've had our talk about Manning and Boudreau So Jim Rutherford, Sean and I broke that down. Maybe we'll start with the actual hiring of Bruce Boudreau. We'll start with Tyler on that, or hiring of Jim Rutherford. Sorry, there's so many new names in Vancouver.
I know. Well, I was going to say what a difference a week makes. I mean, we got together at this time last Monday, and we hadn't even had the first game with Bruce Boudreau behind the bench. Of course, that was a big shutout victory. I think 4-0 over the Kings. The beginnings of Bruce, there it is. And then last night, now you've even got the DJ encouraging it with the music in the building. Coach doesn't care for that. I get that. Bruce doesn't want it to be about him. It's about the guys and the team, and that's important. I agree with all of that. But hey, look, if it's something that's catchy with the fans, and I mean, even a couple of players seem to be catching on with that as well. If I'm not mistaken, I think Luke Shen with the fist bumps coming into the dressing room after the game, I think dropped one of those to the coach on the way off of their win last night against Carolina. So no, things are great in Vancouver. You just hope now that it stays that way. Clearly a new confidence there with the coach, and then now hiring Jim Rutherford, and it's been fairly evident that the Canucks have been trying to get him there for a while. I heard him mentioning today how the great efforts that Francesco Aquilini went to recruit him and convince him to come to Vancouver. So both extremely credible guys. Rutherford, I mean, we kicked that name around here long ago, and, sort of speculating on, who would the Canucks go with if they were going to replace Jim Benning. I thought it was really a long shot if a Jim Rutherford would want to come to a Canadian market and work for a demanding owner that it seems to be with the Canucks at his age. I think, what is he, 72 or something?
Yeah, 72.
Yeah, I mean, it surprised me that he would actually be interested in the job, but we'll take it. That's a great resume. He's won Stanley Cups with different organizations, and I guess views the opportunity to work in a Canadian market as a new challenge that he hasn't tackled yet.
Yeah, in 2 different decades, in 2 different cities, I think that definitely kind of bolsters his resume for sure. And as far as the Bruce there it is thing, I have sympathy that Bruce doesn't want to make it about himself, but if something makes Canucks fandom happy, you have to let it slide.
Oh, geez, yeah. If you're the coach of the Canucks, boy, you don't want to. You want to keep those vibes positive as long as you can.
Yeah, he's just trying to it's about the players for him, not him. But yeah, you just got to let it go, and it'll run its course. Probably ending sooner rather than later, but just let it run its course, and let Canucks fans have a little bit of a cathartic release after basically hate watching for the past 20 games before this.
And yeah, as much as Bruce wants it to go away, the Canucks made a T-shirt of it in the team store. So yeah, clearly they're here to make a couple of dollars off of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly it caught on. I don't know how this happened. I'm sure that there'll be a story around that in some future point in time. In terms of that, or I almost die. But yeah, it's like whoa.
Wow.
I get the good here. It certainly looks like a more, I mean, and they're talking about it for sure. They say, you're right, Tyler. They're playing with a lot more confidence, and they're playing with a lot more jump, and there's a lot more aggression. I mean, you have to admit that Bruce Boudreau's penalty killing style is kind of a bold strategy, Cotton, but whatever that strategy was before certainly wasn't working. So I guess this new one of just like trying to score a goal shorthanded it's new, but it's working. So I think from that perspective, it's interesting. But I also thought, I guess to me, what I kind of was fascinating where Rutherford is at with this team, because I mean, it's so easy to kind of look at this now and within the last 4 games and kind of feel like everything is fine. I mean, you have your detractors for sure. You caught the Kings on a back-to-back night. You caught the Hurricanes on a back-to-back night. You caught Winnipeg actually also on a back-to-back. And so, I mean, there's always going to be the detractors, but I kind of feel this team is somewhere where Bruce Boudreau has taken them, where they are now, and where Jim Rutherford has said, it's not a there are some holes, and acknowledging the fact, although denied by previous regime, that there wasn't really any, that there's some work to do.
Mm-hmm. Aside from all of those things, Kevin, just in regards to the players and how they looked, well, one, it looks like the shackles have been taken off them, and two, and with all due respect to Travis Green, I mean, it sure looks like they were trying to get the coach fired now, doesn't it? I mean, this night and day difference. I mean, it was pretty well a non-effort before, and then just you make the change and snap the fingers, and suddenly they come alive again. Like, I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think we all sort of felt to an extent last year that was what was going on with the Canucks. So whatever the case, the change has been made. Probably been made a little too late for them to salvage their chance at a playoff spot. But, 6 wins out of the last 7 games here certainly has stopped the free fall in the standings. And I know we're going to get into it a little bit later here, but the Alberta teams have suddenly come back down to earth. And now the possibility of making a run at it here is not as crazy as it might have seemed a week ago.
For me, it looks like they were just trying too hard to play Green's system, and it was a very passive position and zone oriented system. I think they looked at it and said, I guess we don't have the skaters to play an aggressive system. And I think they were wrong. I think Canucks may not be the fastest team, but I think they just were, but they were, I think Green was harping so much on being in position and having being in position, and players were just so frozen on and focused on that it looks like they weren't trying, because they were just so focused on that. And then as soon as they made one mistake, things fell apart, and then the wheels fell off. And now it just seems like Boudreau's just letting them play. I mean, like you're look at what he talked about with Besser. You're a shooter. Shoot.
Yeah.
I want you shooting more. No,
shoot.
Not enough. Still not enough. Shoot more. He's letting the players play to their strengths, which I don't think Travis Green was doing near the end there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, the most drastic difference was the fact that it definitely seemed like Travis was trying to protect their weaknesses, whereas Bruce is actually trying to take advantage of their strengths.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that, Chris. It didn't start off that way with Travis Green, but as you start, having trouble finding winning formulas, then it becomes a strategy of trying to hide your weaknesses. And that's didn't work.
I almost wonder if Travis was trying to get himself fired in some ways. I think he was trying to make a message to someone that the team wasn't good enough, and he was just resistant and playing his system. He kept saying that they didn't have the horses to play a certain style, that they weren't fat. I mean, he made all of these statements. It felt to me like he was just all out of ideas, and and it just became a disconnect pretty much between the team and the players. And it's certainly, the players were not having fun. They certainly seem to be having a lot of fun now. They weren't having fun before, because remember one of the reports from a practice came out that JT Miller, I think it was JT Miller, said that they didn't know what they were doing when Green was yelling about a drill. I think the fun came back in, which I think is a good sign. And I think there's been a bit of an unleash, and just Bruce is wanting to talk to the players and get to know the players, and in a weird way he has done what I think that it needed to happen, although I thought maybe it should have been maybe a harder-nosed, harder-edged guy. But he has stuck up for his players. He has defended them. He's defended them in a kinder, gentler way than, and kind of he's got the media sort of wrapped no, I wouldn't say wrapped around his finger, but I think he's kind of in this position right now where he's holding court, and everybody is enjoying his time here. And I think Jim Rutherford brought sort of the same thing. And there was sort of a breath of fresh air from his conversation today. It was just really honest where the Canucks were at, kind of what he thought. I also thought I thought there was an interesting exchange between him and Daniel Wagner of Vancouver's Awesome. And that wasn't an exchange, but Daniel Wagner asked him if he regretted acquiring guys like Eric Gudbranson and Jack Johnson. And what was telling there is he said no. And what was telling is like, yeah, I believe in analytics, but you can't tell me that those were not good acquisitions. So what it tells me also, and I think that this is going to be an interesting debate going forward. And I do think that this is an area that I think the Canucks are lacking, is I do not think they, and I still, I do not think right now they need more people that, what I think Torts was trying to get to, which we'll get into later. We're good at teases today that play a hard, honest, gritty. You don't necessarily have to fight, but those are the type of people that you would go into the trenches with. I still think they are missing those type of players.
I agree.
Especially if you want a team identity that's hard to play against, those type of gritty players are integral in making that a successful team.
I think they need a couple of those up front more than on the blue line. They've got Tucker Poolman's not a small guy, doesn't play small. Luke Shen is an absolute beast when he gets going. Like he'll throw bodies around in corners and make it an absolute pain to play against.
And even Kyle Burrows.
And Burrows he's not the biggest guy, but he's not afraid to do that. It's up front where I think you need to add. It's where they're going to miss they're going to miss not having a Zach McEwen or a Jonah Gadjevich on that fourth line. I think, even though they may not be the most fleet of foot players, but I think having one of those guys on that fourth line would really help going forwards, or someone of that ilk. But you still need to find a way to get faster. Jim Rutherford said as much in his press conference, and as well as when he was on the radio, is that he thinks that they don't have the fastest skating team, but which is what he wants. So look out for that. I feel like that's going to be a move that he makes here pretty quickly after sort of in early February, after he does his sort of month and a half long sort of assessment of what the team is at, as he said, with the timeline that he's putting on. So I think you're going to see him add speed more than anything else going forwards, though.
No, okay. Just in terms of, there's a few things I want to unpack, but I want to talk. I mean, he had some glowing things to say about Thatcher Demko. By the way, first star of the week, 4-0, and playing outstanding. I have some concerns, and I'll get to that in a second. He said some really good things about Quinn Hughes. What did you think about what he said with Pettersson?
He definitely showed some reservations, but I wouldn't say it was unwarranted or unjustified. Like, clearly he's struggled since, not only like missing a decent chunk last season due to his injury, but then everything that compounded from that injury into what led to this slump that he's been in. Like, I think it's legitimate to maybe have a little bit of doubt, but he's definitely shown flashes of coming back to that. And I still think that player is still there. It's just a matter of him getting back into his game almost in the same way that Brock Besser took almost a full year to get his snipe back to full power after having a wrist injury himself, 2 years ago?
Yes. Yeah, that was the year they acquired Tyler Toffoli.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his comments about PD didn't really hit me at all, honestly. I thought they were bang on. I thought that he said that, players go through that. Like, unless you're a superstar, like a generational player, a McDavid, a Crosby, an Ovechkin, you're going to go through those those slumps, and how you come out of them is what and how you come out of them and how you learn from them is what makes you a better player, and what can take Petey from, say, right now I would say is a right around a point per game type player, and what he learns from this could actually help him in the long run.
And Kev, I know what you're saying in the sense of like it seemed like he was definitely praising Demko and praising Hughes, so it almost felt a little awkward that he wasn't praising Petey right out of the gate as well. But like I was saying, the lack of praise, I guess, is to a certain extent is definitely justified considering his performance.
Tyler, do you have
nothing to add on that? I did want to talk about though. How we learned a few things around sort of the timeline of all the different changes out of the press conference today here. And so it's evident, obviously, that Aquilini had been pursuing Rutherford for quite some time, and he wanted to take more time to make his decision. Then apparently he was under the weather the weekend of the 4th or 5th of December. So why did the coach come first? Well, obviously the ugly scene against Pittsburgh there a couple of Saturdays ago, and you could not proceed beyond that without making a change. But apparently it came out today that this is a hiring that Rutherford supported. So, and that was talked about before the hiring of Bruce Boudreau was made. So, and then in regards to Stan Smeel, I think he was, interim. Interim doesn't really suggest any length of time. I mean, we would have figured more than 4 days, but if there were decisions to be made, such as waiver claims or whatever, he would have been the guy that had the authority to do that. But I don't think we should be too concerned about Stan Smeal's feelings, because I have to assume he knew that these machinations were happening in the background already.
Not only that, but he'll go into the history books as a GM with a perfect record.
Yes. Good for Stan.
The greatest GM of all time, Stan Smeal, the one with the best record.
Yes, and was a media darling for those 2 days as well, or 4 days, or whatever it was.
As far as Rutherford, though, I just want to say it was a nice breath of fresh air in the sense of you definitely get a vibe from him that he's not going to sugarcoat things, and he's a straight talker, and is even sitting next to the owner is not afraid to shoot from the hip and speak what he observes. And he admit that like there might be a difference from viewing it 3,000 kilometers away as opposed to in the same building. But the fact that he was willing to criticize the previous regime's weaknesses without basically trying to make it sound nice, I actually thought was great to hear, because he's not going to kiss ass in the same way that Benning kind of did in the second half of his tenure.
Yeah, it sure seemed that way once Jim was reporting directly to Francesco, and very interesting to hear Jim Rutherford talk about managing upwards, and we touched on this briefly amongst ourselves here earlier today, but it's something that I've brought up in the past. And I think, Sean, you did a poll question, what are you looking for in a GM? And I said, well, I want a guy that can manage upward. Very interesting, though, to hear him say it right beside Francesco Aquilini, because there's the guy that needs to be managed from below. So, I think we can feel pretty optimistic at this point today that there's going to be a pretty high degree of autonomy for both Jim Rutherford and whoever he hires as the general manager below him. And clearly that separation between the general manager and ownership that was there when Trevor Linden was around and wasn't there in the last few years with just Jim Benning. So, but we will see as things unfold here through the trade deadline, the draft, and particularly free agency in the summer, as to whether, there's some philosophical changes in approach there from before, and whether that means ownership is being hands off finally.
Yeah, it certainly was. It's one of those things. I mean, let's be honest here. Aquilini needs Rutherford more than Rutherford needs Aquilini. Rutherford doesn't need this job. He's fine. He can go and, he can do whatever he wants. He's 72 years old.
He's already in the Hall of Fame.
What's that?
He's already in the Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
He literally does not need this job.
Yeah. So I think he's in a position to basically say, look, you need to sit down, Francesco, I got this. And and all of that. So I think don't think Jim Benning was in the position to stand up with to Aquilini in the same way. And I don't even know if that's the right word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. Just kind of take charge, I don't think Benning had the personality to take the charge. Even quite frankly, I think that Rutherford just has that aura about him and so I certainly think it's a culture. There's going to be a culture change. I had the other thing that was interesting though too was how there were questions asked about, and let me start by saying this because I think that there's been a few comments, not a lot, but there have been a few comments about the age of Bruce Boudreau and Jim Rutherford, and we need more young people in the game and all of that. And I think that there is an element of truth. I do agree with that. I do think that there's some new ideas that should come into the game, and we do need more diversity. I absolutely agree with that. But there's also something to be said with this situation in Vancouver, that both Boudreau and Rutherford have come in and have brought in an instant sense of stability. And does that come, like, I'm not trying to belittle, I mean, it can come from youth, but stability comes with a little bit more age. As we talked about, Sean, you talked about being 30s and going back to school. I was in my 40s going back to school. It is, I don't know how to say this, but there is something about, learned experience that does bring a sense of stability into a situation.
Yeah, going from a Willie D and a Jim Benning, who were first timers in their positions when they got hired here, compared to a guy who's been an NHL coach, 4 previous times? And then Rutherford, who's been an executive for multiple decades now. Like you said, it brings that air of stability and trust and just overall, I guess, resiliency and reliance that comes with that experience.
And that's not to say that youth cannot bring stability, but it does seem like there has been a certain amount of age stability here that I think has helped. Anyway,
it's not age; it's wisdom and experience is what it is, and you've got a couple guys there that know how to handle the media and know how and feel comfortable doing it. We had Travis Green, who was very confrontational with the media at times. We haven't seen that from Boudreau yet. We've seen him being very welcoming. He's fun Uncle Bruce right now. And he's holding, as you said, he's holding court. And then Rutherford's got 3 cups that he can basically say, you don't like my age? Shove it. I can't, I've got 3 cups to say otherwise. And I think he's got the confidence to do that. The confidence to just basically, literally say, I'm going to have to manage upward. And the confidence to say, no, I don't think that those the good Branson and Johnson acquisitions were as bad as you make them out to be. Mm-hmm. And he's not afraid to bite back, but in a much better way than Travis Green would. And it's just, the Canucks needed that, and as you nailed it, Kev. The Canucks and the Aquilinis needed Rutherford more than Rutherford needed them. And I think it's a very, very smart, shrewd move to bring in Rutherford, who is someone who has been. I mean, he was brought up by the Carmanos family, who owns the Whalers and then the Hurricanes, and we're pretty hands-on, so he knows how to manage upward. And then when he went to Pittsburgh, I think there was talk that he was like, no, I'm not going to stay here if you're going to tell me I have to trade this person. So he knows. I think he knows what he's getting into. I think Aquilini, despite his petulant behavior at times on social media, knows that having a steadying figure who is not going, it's a lot harder to say that now that they've got Rutherford, that Aquilini's running the show, mm-hmm. Right? And I think I think it was a shrewd move to bring in someone like that so that that narrative goes away, at least for the time being.
And as far as anyone who's having like issue with the whole age thing, Rutherford brought up in the press conference that he actually is very fond of mentoring younger guys and grooming them from like an AGM role into being general managers. So I honestly think that the general manager that he's going to hire eventually is probably going to be on the younger side, and a guy that he's going to mentor who is eventually going to be whether you want to say, trying to remember the names of all the guys he's mentored along the way.
Jason Botterill, Bill Garrett.
Botterill was the one, yeah.
Yep.
And others like Peter Karmanos is someone that they're talking about. There's another the AGM in Pittsburgh that I think he helped bring up, and
I believe was the name.
Yeah. So I think that whoever they do bring in, whether it is the GM or maybe an assistant GM, is going to be the future future GM and or president of this team for the foreseeable future, because Rutherford's only supposedly only on the 3-year deal, and I feel like that's a good three. Like get this team back on track, get the culture back on track. They talked about that was the buzzword for today for in the past week was culture. And then you bring in someone who you can mentor and groom and bring in that next wave.
And let's not forget that the Sedins are also basically are going to be groomed for the next couple of years under this tenure anyway.
So,
yeah, that's a fascinating way to look at it. Sorry, Tyler, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I don't want to give Francesco Aquilini, too much credit here, but I think we do need to acknowledge that it takes quite a bit of swallowing some pride here to do this fairly sweeping house cleaning here in the middle of a season, in which he had doubled down on Jim Benning and Travis Green, and there was the vote of confidence tweet thread there last year, and then they kind of wrote off the season and they gave them another chance and really believed in the plan. Remember, he went on Sportsnet 650 before the season and doubled down on his belief in Jim Benning's plan. So he's really had to swallow it here and also pay guys to not work for him. So, I just think that's easy to overlook when you're talking about a billionaire owner and that's not very popular with the fan base. But I think there has to be some credit given there in terms of changing course, and also basically admitting that the culture that existed under his leadership at the very top of the organization as the chairman and governor that sits on the board of governors, owner of the team, he's admitting that he didn't have a good culture beneath him there. So to just kind of go this route now is great to see. It's one that I certainly wasn't expecting even 2 or 3 weeks ago.
It is humbling, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, I think one of the things that I do hope Rutherford does in this organization is, I think, close the leaks. I think there's been far too much of it. There's been debate about a number of debate about Vancouver media here. The fact of the matter is that I personally think far too much information being leaked about the Vancouver Canucks. And I think that absolutely needs to stop. There is stuff that is going to get out probably, but the amount that came out in comparison to other organizations, I just think it was, and some of this stuff, whether it was true or fabricated, or there was smoke and there was fire, or whatever, it was too much.
Well, to that point, agents leak information all the time, but it sure felt like there was leakage coming from the organization itself. And I agree with you, Kevin. That was getting out of hand. And you have to think that having Jim Rutherford around and this house cleaning that's occurred should slow that down to some extent anyway.
And speaking of stuff we found out from today's press conference, it wasn't even Rutherford who let go of both Chris Gear as well as Jonathan Wall. So clearly they wanted to just fully clean house, and maybe, who knows, like probably pure speculation, but maybe the leaks from the inside were coming from one of those two individuals, and they wanted to basically eliminate any potential of that moving forward and just fully clean house.
It's entirely possible.
That is it, but there's also the whole thing of, I think people knew that Benning wouldn't do anything. So whether it was agents, whether it was wherever those leaks were coming from, they knew that there wasn't going to be repercussions for it. I think under Rutherford there might be. I think there will be a tighter office, and they aren't going to. And they aren't going. I bet you we won't see as many, even though we do have a lot of media poking around trying to find that. And I think it was. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think it's just, there was a lot. You're right, Kev. There was way too many leaks wherever they were coming from. They may not always come from inside, right? They can come from agents. They can come from just connections through the grapevine type deal. But I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad as it was under the Benning regime there.
Yeah, and I also think the other thing, and look, everything turned out hunky dory, and we're in a good space. But you cannot, as an organization, let it get to the point that it did before you make a change. There has to be some more proactivity here. To me, it's sending a bad message. Like, if you don't like things, you could either quit on your coach, B, throw a jersey on the ice if you're a fan, chant someone gets fired. You have to be more proactive. There has to that, and I really think Rutherford will bring that in, because to me, that has to happen. You cannot let it get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, Rutherford might almost be the other extreme of it, where it's quite well known that he doesn't like to just sit still. He is almost too active, in the sense that if he gets bored, he'll trade someone, is kind of the jokes that I've heard during this past week about his tenure in both Pittsburgh as well as Carolina.
He said all the right things in his press conference too about the Canucks are not in the right spot in the development of a team to be trading away top picks, and I think that was a breath that got a sigh of relief from a lot of Canucks fans. Even though I think if you look at how, like, the totality of his work, I think you'd have understood that, but I think people were too focused on how many first round picks he traded away to try and keep Crosby and Malkin and Letang and that Pittsburgh Penguins team going at the top of and being Stanley Cup contenders. But yeah, the Canucks aren't there yet. They aren't in that stage, and he knows that. So I think it's not going to be a. But I think it's not going to be a. He's not going to go and look for big trades where he's going to be trading away draft picks for veteran players. But I don't think he's going to be shy on making a deal here or there if he thinks that he can acquire a player that may be undervalued and can fit the style that he wants.
And he also conceded that he's going to have to get creative as well, because he admitted that, like, we're already up near the cap. So anyone that you're going to replace, you're basically bringing in someone of almost equal value. So yeah, you're going to have to get creative with how you improve this team with the ability and space that you have.
Got to be cautious here. I mean, yeah, people want to hear that. Oh no, he's not going to be trading high draft picks, and he's not going to be in this go for it now situation. But if somebody comes to you with an offer that is a pretty good improvement to the team, and it may not be that long term move, don't be surprised if one of those moves happens. It just kind of depends on what the offers are. So it is refreshing in one sense to hear that he has taken a long-term view here on trying to get the team younger and get some draft picks back and not be in a hurry to make a deal. But at the same time, if there's a good deal on the table, passing on it may not be the right choice either.
Yeah. Yeah. And his. Yeah, that will be. Yeah, he's going to be smart. I mean, it's not going to be. I mean, he's kind of. I think he's also laying a message out to everyone else that we're not. Don't expect a high. For don't expect that offer of to get a high first round lottery, possible lottery or high pick in the first round. I mean, these next two drafts, 2022 and 2023. I keep saying it, but they're some significant pieces in this draft that you certainly want to have an opportunity to snag at. So at the very least, I don't see it for the next 2 years anyway with what's out there. He's Rutherford shutting that door down right away. So, but you're right. If it's something that makes sense, then you can do it. But you know, but I think he's just giving expectations to everybody here. I mean, you hear general managers always kind of they speak to other general managers in the media with subtle speak here, and I take that we're not trading high round draft picks as sort of a fact that I don't think they want to, and I don't think that they should, and I think that they need to fill that cupboard. Clearly, I think we all agree that they need to fill the cupboard, but I also think it's just in case that was something that I mean, someone probably would like to have Vancouver's first round pick as an option.
Well, yeah, when they say they don't want to make that trade, I mean, if they're offering a franchise player as part of the deal coming the other way, I mean, you make the deal, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's
Yeah.
what he's saying today. Next week could be a different set of circumstances.
He's saying all the right things.
Yeah.
And as far as Bruce Boudreau goes, I mean, he's been off to a good start in that regard as well. And I was thinking earlier, he kind of reminds me a little bit about John Gibbons when he was the field manager for the Blue Jays. Just an affable guy. Never really seemed that uncomfortable in front of the camera. Wasn't afraid to call guys out when they're being a little out of line. And it just Travis Green and especially Willie Desjardins before him, they never seemed to grasp those things. It was very standoffish all the time and uncomfortable. And if you're looking to instill confidence in the fans, what we're seeing with Boudreau certainly helps. And I think that helped with John Gibbons when he was managing the Blue Jays, even through some disappointing stretches there too. People liked him. He was an everyman. People could connect with that. And while people like Travis Green, I think they had a harder time connecting with him when things weren't going well. So hopefully that continues to be the case here with these guys.
Yeah, it's funny. Just in some ways, Daryl Sutter fits that Calgary narrative. Not, I wouldn't say narrative, but sort of the Calgary media, where I think you can be a bit gruffer, and they sort of maybe don't expect Daryl Sutter to give a particularly long-winded answer. And Bruce Boudreau, like, I don't think Daryl Sutter's media technique would work well in Vancouver. I could just see, hey, why aren't you playing PD? Because I don't want to play PD. Next question. Like, what,
Yeah, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work, right?
What Bruce is doing here is sort of Ted Lassoing this, or maybe Ted Lasso is Bruce Boudreauing this. Who knows? But yeah, just kind of, I don't know, just making conversation and hey, this isn't working. And, I think one of the best quotes, looking back, I think one of the best moments Bruce Boudreau had, and I think established everything. I think it was Thomas Dranson asked him the question about the penalty kill, and he said, "This team is last in the league at 60% in penalty kill," and his answer was, "This not good, is it?" Yeah. And it's just like, oh yeah, this isn't great. I completely understand. Yeah, you're right. I agree with you. It sucks. We have to. He didn't say it that way, but he kind of just built some confidence and. I'd have to look at the stats, but I do not recall, I think, one power play goal the last 4 games allowed. And they had
Something like that. That's really good.
Yeah. They had a pretty late. Did they have a kill last night late against the Carolina? They had a late kill they killed off too, didn't they?
Yeah.
So
a lot better. And as you jokingly said that they're trying to score on the penalty kill. It's just they're playing aggressive. They're not letting the team set up anymore. As I said before, the whatever system that was being deployed by the by Travis Green and Nolan Baumgartner was all about passivity and zone play, and it wasn't working.
And the same
And
for
they're now-
guys, whereas now it's by committee.
which is so much better. So much better. Having Quinn Hughes and Petey and Pod Colson penalty killing is huge. Especially
And I think it was
Petey and
revealed-
Hughes.
Wasn't it revealed that it was Quinn that was the one who went to Bruce and said, "Hey, put me on the PK"?
Yeah, because for me, and maybe I'm old school in this, but if you're supposed to be a top pair defenseman, hell, even a top 4 defenseman, you should be on the penalty kill. Flat out.
I would add to that. I think if you're a number 1 center in the NHL, that you should be killing penalties. That should be part of. Maybe you're not always on the ice, but you can be relied on for that.
If you're in that top tier, it comes with that responsibility of maybe not all the time or consistently, but if you get tapped for it, that you should be expected to be competent with it.
Yeah, and exactly. If you're expected to be considered a number 1 center or top 6 forward, whatever, you should be able to kill penalties when needed. This idea that a top 6 scores and bottom 6 checks is outdated and needs to go away because it just doesn't work. You look at the teams who win cups. They have first line centers who win or are close, or top 6 centers who are close to Selke winning in the Selke voting, if not winning it. Those are the players that win you cups, not necessarily the Hart players.
Yeah, and I guess to me, with Pettersson and Hughes, I think the thing that is a bit head scratching to me that they were not being used for penalty kills is they're both really smart with the puck, and to me, that's part of what makes good penalty killing. I mean, yes, you got to block shots, and yes, you need your goaltender to make work, and yes, it's about positioning, but my gosh, being smart with getting that puck out is a key element of penalty kill, and that it is confusing to me that Pettersson and Hughes have never been used in that. That is one of my head scratchers that I will leave with Travis Green.
Yep.
But
and I just think it was about time, and you're seeing PD play a lot better, and they're getting more engaged, and you're getting them out playing more too.
And that's the biggest kind of thing for me is you get into some penalty troubles, and if you're a guy that doesn't play on the penalty kill, it really is a killer for rhythm. If you're a player that needs some rhythm and being out there on a regular shift and not sitting on the bench for too long, that can be a bit of a problem. We've seen that with the Sedins as well. The Canucks would run into some penalty trouble, and they're not out there for long stretches. And with these younger guys, and you're paying, you just gave Petey and Hughes big money. We certainly can't complain that they're not earning the contract if they're being used out there in all situations. Get them out there. Don't be worried about injuries. I think that's overstated.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. I don't think it was ever a proven, someone with more an analytical mind than I have, but I don't think there's been ever proven success that bottom 6 kills penalties, top 6 or power play has been a proven formula of success ever in the National Hockey League. And the Edmonton,
I get it as far as managing ice time. I mean, you don't want to do like what Edmonton does and just run McDavid out there for 30 minutes a night as a forward and have him out of gas. You don't want that, but at the same time, it shouldn't be rigidly defined like Sean was saying, where it's top 6, bottom 6 do this and that and never move off that. I mean, the game's evolved beyond that now.
Even if you're gifted by the hockey gods, your forward should not be doing the same amount of ice time as defensemen.
No. Yeah, there's just no way you can have the same jump, and especially on the defensive side of the game, if you're out there that much as a forward.
Yeah, I mean, back in the olden days, back in the 80s, Gretzky and Curry killed penalties at times, and they scored shorthanded goals. But also, there was also bench clearing brawls, so they could play 30 minutes, but on the ice, but there was like a 45-minute break because there was a bench clearing brawl, and then we could all get back. So that's how Gretzky and Curry got their break. So, Anyway, that was pretty funny. No, it wasn't. But no, I seriously, I do think, like, to me, that's, the Flames have Elias Lindholm killing penalties. I don't know if the Leafs have Matthews killing penalties ever, but it's just, to me,
I think he has lately, and then Marner's always been on the kill as well.
I think Ovechkin's been killing penalties this year.
Yep. And so you don't have to have him doing it all the time, but you should just be reliant on four to six, like your 4 to 6 bottom of the lineup forwards and defensemen to do it. And you need your star players, because guess what? Buy-in.
Yeah.
If your top players are doing that and they're putting their and they're putting the effort in defensively on the penalty kill, everyone else will.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? I mean, you want them, you got to put them out there only if they're going to actually commit to doing the job well. I mean, if they're out there cheating for offense when they're supposed to be playing defensively, that's another matter. But that's not what we've seen with the Canucks. When Petey and Hughes have been given the opportunity, they've really seized it here so far, and the special teams are looking a lot better, and they're winning games. Let's hope it stays that way.
And I do think the other thing that I like. Sorry, were you going to say something, Sean? To that,
I think Chris was.
Oh, I was going to mention something about Ovi, but it's not that important.
Well, what I was going to say is I like, and I think this is something that I do want to see more in the future in the hockey, is this idea of having 2 penalty killing units do 1-minute shifts. I think that is outdated. I like this idea that Boudreau is sending out 2 forwards and 2 defensemen in 25-second intervals. Like, why are we, and even with the power play, why are we expecting 1-minute shifts of these guys when we do average 30-second shifts in even strength? Like, that just, to me, that's kind of becoming a little bit of an outdated.
On the power play, as long as you maintain possession in the zone, you don't change.
True.
You might be able to sneak one guy off or something, but then you're screwing up your unit. So no, I
was gonna say, Hughes is playing all 2 minutes of every power play right now. So
yeah.
And in overtime, it's just him and Myers that play, and that's it, pretty much. But on the penalty kill, I mean, certainly, if you can clear the zone and get the puck down the ice, I mean, change, fresh guys, let's go, keep it rolling. Doesn't matter who you are, you're out there.
Anything else with the Canucks that we need to touch on here?
You put on the agenda there the Aquilini tweet about the media. I think you kind of hinted at that there. I mean, I if you were following me on Twitter, you'd already know how I feel about this. I mean, it's concerning to see the owner of a professional sports franchise that sensitive about media coverage, and I don't really know what the motivation there is for him to do it. I wish he wouldn't, even if he's right about that. Where the media flip-flops their positions all the time. And I think in this case, he has a point. But, like, the team has just now won 4 games. It was the 3-game winning streak at the time. You've got all this positivity around the team with the changes that you as the owner have led. Like, just let it go. Why? Why are you picking a fight with an already combative press? I don't understand that, unless he thinks that plays well with the fan base. And I think there's some validity to that too. But to me, that the whole thing is unnecessary. Enough with the sniping at the media on Twitter, please.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall with the press, whoever had the conversation with the press before and the media before the Rutherford and Aquilini press conference, saying we are not talking about the tweet.
Yeah.
Because no one brought it up, and I was actually kind of surprised. But then I thought about it, and they probably said, "Look, that this is not the time to talk about that," even though it probably was.
If it was directed at anyone in particular, I'm going to take a guess. It's my former colleague, Dan Russell, who used to be the host of Sports Talk, for those who are old enough to remember. He's been pretty critical of Francesco Aquilini lately, even going back to his press conference introducing Bruce Boudreau. And, I mean, I love Dan, but, I mean, he's a Stan Smeel fan. They go way back. I mean, there's a bit of self-interest there, and in Dan kind of taking Francesco Aquilini to task over how quickly Dan Smeel was in and out as the interim general manager there. So, if that's who he's directing his message to, I don't know that, but if that's who Francesco's really speaking to, I mean, Dan's not in the media anymore. He's just a Twitter guy. Yes, he's a very well-informed guy with an outstanding career in sports broadcasting, but like, he's not the one you need to be wasting your energy on, Francesco.
Just a curiosity question. Like, obviously, I'm aware of Dan Russell, but was he known more as like a Griffiths loyalist back when they were owning the team?
So, yeah. Of course, back in those days, CKNW had the broadcast rights, and Dan was on that station. So it was a much different time for him in terms of where he fit in with the team, right?
But it does kind of paint his, I guess, perspective, if you will.
He's from the old school, which is fine. But I mean, Francesco, I mean, look, you let the work speak for itself here. You've really had overall a good couple of weeks here with the fans. Don't ruin that with unnecessary sniping at the media.
This is what I would do though if I'm Jim Rutherford. Francesco, give me your phone.
Yeah, just hand over the device.
Give it to me. You are not using it anymore. And you are specifically not using it on a Saturday anymore because you have sent some of your dumbest tweets on Saturdays, by the way. And it's not coincident. I'm telling you, I found it interesting. That's on a Saturday night. It's hockey night in Canada. And it's right around 30. It's right around the 32 thought segment that Francesco is tweeting again. It just that timing just rubs me the wrong way.
I know, and anybody with half a brain can kind of see through all of that there and what he's trying to do. Like, I don't know. I mean, just you know what? His brand is sticking to those really supportive, like kind of one-liner tweets after a good win. Like, Sean shares them every friggin' game. I know as soon as I've seen it in my feed, I know it's been shared in the group chat. Yeah, it's so on. It's the timing's impeccable. Stick to that. That's the Twitter brand that I think we can all live with.
Okay, yeah, Francesco, get your Google Docs out. Okay, this is what you need to do. You have good game, exciting hockey. You have your little one-liners. You cut and paste that. You posted it after every game, and then you put the phone down and you go do something else. That's
Hockey's
your job.
Fun and exciting again. That was the one from last night.
Yeah, that's all you need to do.
It's good. It only takes one line on the screen.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Not this whole 280 characters about the media flip-flopping.
Yeah. Sometimes with when Francesco tweets, do you not wish we're back to 140 characters?
I know.
Gee. Yeah.
Can we limit certain accounts? That too. And you mentioned this ton of times, Tyler, managing up, and I think that's where Rutherford can do that. He can do that, and I just think just get Aquilini out of the way, just out of, even do what the Oilers have kind of done with Duncan Keith here, and just say no media. Sorry, can't talk to him right now. He's not available. Well, now that he's done his 2 press conferences, like for last week when he had to clean house, and then this week introducing Rutherford, let's not see him again for God knows how many years moving forward.
Well, and I think he just said that a week ago when he made the change and introduced Bruce Boudreau that he thinks the coach and the manager should be speaking for the team, and then here he is on Twitter making comments. It's a bit contradictory there, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. It is. I do think that there is a lot to this conversation though around the Vancouver media, and there's been a lot of debate around it. And I think that at times, in general, I think what you've said, Tyler, that I think is true. I think Twitter and social media has been sort of a detriment in a sense to what good journalism and good media is, because I think the ethic of that has often changed. And at times it's more about And I'm just talking about this in a general sense, and I'm not necessarily poking at anybody because I don't think this is just a hockey thing, and I don't just think of this a Vancouver thing.
No.
I think that this is a Twitter social media thing. It's more about content and accuracy. And
Oh,
and
yeah.
I and I think that's where this becomes really dangerous. And I think kudos is deserved to those that do that that go on the path of accuracy very well.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that journalism has suddenly abandoned the concept of accuracy entirely, but there's always the pressure in the biz to be first, or to be, quick about things, to be on it all the time. Speed kills, as they say. So inevitably, what ends up happening is when you get those two things kind of crashing up against one another, the need for being first versus the need for accuracy. Unfortunately, sometimes the accuracy suffers, and the presence of social media, I don't think, has helped the craft one bit in that regard. And then it's also blurred the lines between what is pure reporting, what's analysis, what's a strong opinion piece, and what's truth and what's rumor and what's theory and what's speculation. All those things are now getting muddled, and it's left to individual people to try and figure out what is what. And then when you've got algorithms on these social media platforms that curate content based on what you're viewing, that really muddies it, right?
And to even further that argument, like the fact that we run a podcast, but we are also in direct competition with media who are also on podcasts.
Yeah.
So like those tiers of like whether it's organization, media, fans, even that is gray now.
Yeah,
it's just it's so, and then you throw in there why am I drawing blank on the word? Just the interaction on social media too, with
engagement. Is that the word?
With reporters and everyone is just and Joe Blow and from some town just outside of Vancouver or some town just outside of Calgary, like it's so frustrating because you see you see that they're all human. Everyone's flawed and has issues and all that, but like for me, I hold the people who stay above it, I hold them at a completely different level. I think I've heard Elliot Friedman talk about how he tries his best to stay out of the mud. While there's people, there's media members out there in all parts of media that just love to get into the mud and sling it. And it's just frustrating for a lot of people. I think there's a lot of people who are just like, no, what we want from media is to report as accurately as possible, give us an opinion piece here and there, but do it in a way that it doesn't sound like you're preaching to us or talking down to us for thinking otherwise.
Yes. Yeah. And analysis can be done without that talking down effect.
We talked about how the difference between Boudreau and or how Rutherford came across in terms of pushing back against a narrative that one of the media members was trying to get across with analytics and the Jack Johnson and Eric Branson acquisitions. He came across defiant, but not in a confrontational way. And we're just coming off an era of Travis Green where the last little bit he was very confrontational and very abrupt. And maybe we use this to transition into talking about John Tortorella and how he's been very much abrupt and confrontational with the media, and now he's just being an abrupt and confrontational media member.
Well, yeah. It's good. It was the transition that I was thinking, but I actually I wanted to bring a different point to this. It's interesting to me how many people that disagreed with what John Tortorella had to say retweeted what he said. And to me, that created more of a conversation and amplified that a lot more than maybe that we needed. It, I mean, people were angry about his comments about Connor McDavid, and people are now angry about what he said about the Trevor Zegras Sonny Milano goal. and if it thought it was good for the game. But it wasn't the people that agreed with Torts that were retweeting that. It was the people that disagreed with Torts that were like, hey, this is a really stupid comment. I saw one tweet that said he wasn't shamed enough for his comment. And I think that's the other, just one thing I will say. I think, I did agree with Elliot Friedman on Hockey Night when he said that I think I don't think that there was a necessary thing to pile on. And I mean, Tortorella with his opinion. Now we can get into his opinion. And by the way, would encourage you, for those that are pretty angry at John Tortorella, Artur O'Kell and Ray Ferraro actually had a lengthier conversation with Tortorella about the goal. It's a 6-minute one that I don't know if anyone saw. I still finished that, but there was a good debate about both sides, and Ferraro discussed that with him. And I'll start with my opinion, because I don't where Torts is wrong is we do need the skill in the game. And as Ray Ferraro said, one of the things that Ferraro said, there's no way that he would have been able to do some of the things that the kids can do now in the games. Some of these lacrosse moves, and they should be, and we should be encouraging that type of creativity. And it's very important. And it is good that we have new and fresh ideas like that and new ways of skills that come into the game. I think we should always be evolving and always adapting. But I also don't think that he was wrong, because I do think at times we are trying to sacrifice grit. And you look at any championship team in any professional sport, and you look at, I'm not no life coach, and I can't dream of any success, but I can only go by what I know. It is hard to be successful in anything without blood, sweat, tears, grit, and hard work, and a bit of passion. And to me, that's where I think people took what Tort said a bit out of context. I think that's what he was trying to say is, it's not that he hates the goal so much as he thinks that it's becoming more about flash and dash, and we are forgetting that there is some grit that needs to happen, and you cannot win a championship without grit. And maybe some of you out there will think I'm too old school for that, and I'm a fuddy-duddy, but you look at any team that has won a championship, they've had the grit to do it.
And Torts has made those kinds of comments in the past, not just since he's been working for ESPN, and that's how he views the game. I mean, it's easy for the more modern, younger crowd to sort of ignore that loyal, older school viewership that's still there, still consuming the product, still spending money on the product, that still values the importance of the dislike between worthy competitors and the toughness of the battle and those blood, sweat, and tears that you refer to, Kevin. Like, we have to be careful not to lose that. That's what makes sports so compelling, is when you have those points of friction that are there, and then you combine that with the skill and evolution of the game over time, and then that's what keeps everybody hooked. But if we're just going to go to a purely skill game with no physicality and no bite to the game, I'm not sure that's a place we want to be. That's a be careful what you wish for. Now, the way that people react to Torts, I mean, people just don't like Torts, so they're just, as soon as he comes on the screen, they're just frothing to criticize the guy before he's even said anything. And that's his brand. And frankly, ESPN loves it, because ESPN's whole MO is debate. That's the way they operate. They spend how many hours of programming every day on debate shows? And then
Stephen A. Smith.
Some live events. I mean, with their hockey coverage, there's not even much of it on the actual TV channel. A lot of it's on their streaming service. But they're going to get that debate content on ESPN. Come hell or high water, we are going to debate old school versus skill on hockey. And Torts is the perfect guy for that.
Yeah. Hockey at its best has a great combination of speed, skill, for lack of a better term, violence, and that's what we love about it. Mm-hmm. You're playing with sticks, shooting a rubber disc into a net on razor blades
in a confined space.
In a confined space, and you're allowing you're allowing and promoting physical contact.
with the
That's what we
occasional
love.
actual fight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bare
The fans
knuckle
love the
brawls.
fights.
They're bare knuckle
Hello, Zach
fights. It's
Cassian
UFC.
versus Matthew Kachuk, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
you're telling me
it's-
that wasn't awesome when Talbot and Mike Smith came out and met at center ice?
Yeah.
Like it's a dangerous sport, but that risk, that adrenaline thrill and feel is why we love the sport. And I think
It's hockey's X
we need to-
factor.
yeah, I was half expecting to see Jacob Trouba get the book thrown at him for that hit on Jujhar Khaira, and I really hope Khaira comes back and can play, but that was a clean hit. And back in the 90s, we celebrated those hits.
Yes.
We celebrated clean hits that just would intimidate players. Now it's now an argument on whether or not it should be a clean hit. And I think it's finding that right balance. We want to keep the players as healthy as possible and keep them on the ice as much as possible, not in stretchers or hospital rooms or dark rooms because of concussions for sure. But it's finding that right balance, and I do agree. That goal, fantastic for hockey. Anyone saying otherwise is just completely wrong. But the whole thought process where Tortorella basically went in the fact that it is more about flash and dash and these super high skills instead of like celebrating the big hits and the steadying defensive defensemen and the Milan Lucic's, the Chris Tanevs, the Luke Shens of the world is what is part of the game too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's what we need to. It's about finding that right balance. And I'm seeing a comment about celebrating hits that shorten careers. Yes, Dylan, the Scott Stevens hit on Paul Kariya, that crossed the line. It was allowed back then, but it shouldn't have been. But there's also very good clean hits out there that just people seem to want to like suspend players for now.
Ryan Lomberg.
Yeah.
Ryan Lomberg last night, he hit McDonald from the Avalanche, and he was required to fight right after. And I mean, I thought it was a clean hit.
Anytime someone your teammate goes down like that, you're gonna want revenge, regardless of whether or not the hit is clean or dirty. That's just the way it is.
That's just part of the NHL code, if you will, at that point.
It's not even that. That's just emotions.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like I hate that word. I hate that phrase because the code doesn't exist. It's all based off of what you think is right. There's no actual
when I use that word, I just meant more so in the instinctual emotional reaction that all hockey players have. It's just that like it's almost instinctive as opposed to intellectual.
Yeah. Well, it's the pack mentality of a team sport, and especially with physicality. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up not too long ago, I stumbled upon the highlights of the Red Wings and the Canucks from 0-2, and you guys got to remember when Bertuzzi nailed Chris Chelios into the end boards. I mean, the roof damn near came off General Motors Place that night when that happened. And if that happened in today's NHL, there would be debate for days over how dirty that was and how many games the guy should have been suspended for. And it was kind of dangerous, but back then that was part of the sport. It was like, whoa, hits, excitement, just people loved that. And it wasn't just celebrated, it was glorified.
If we're going back half step, though, I also want to bring up the fact that like Trouba followed up that first hit against Khaira the second night against McKinnon, and both were equally clean as far as our definition of clean hits.
What I hate about Khaira is, unfortunately, and he had that fight with Brett Ritchie last season when he was with the Oilers, and I hated just seeing that camera shot on him there. Unfortunately, that's really unfortunate. But I don't think there was any intent to injure on Jacob Trouba's part. I think it was a hit, and it's tough for me to accept that that's a suspension. But I don't at the same time, we do want to reduce concussions, and we do need to figure something out around that, because you don't want to see Jujhar Khaira, like that. You don't want to see any player like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's finding that right balance. And I think I think where Torts is where Torts, I think the point that Torts was trying to make was that I think we are skewing away from part of what makes hockey hockey. It'd be like saying, all right, we're now playing touch football or flag football instead of full contact football.
Yeah, Torts is not trying to promote Neanderthal ways or take us back to the 1970s and 1980s. If that's what people think, I think they're misconstruing what Torts is saying. But he definitely places a strong emphasis on the, a strong dislike from opposing players and the physical component of the game. And I agree with it. I think it's very compelling that way when you have a healthy amount of that.
And I can see it, and I agree with that part of what Torts was trying to get across. I think what rubbed me personally the wrong way is how it came across, in the sense of like he would have taken them out after the game and like basically reprimanded them for it. And for me, that's not something that it is worthy of discipline. And to me, that's what really, I guess, pissed me off about Torts' comment, was it just seemed like he was so reactively negative to it that he couldn't even see the potential positive aspect that Sean's pointed out already.
Let me counteract that, though, and let me throw a question at you here. Would Trevor Zegras and Sonny Milano have tried that goal in Boston?
That's a very good question.
They definitely picked their moment to do it. Like, it was against a bottom tier team in Buffalo. Like, they obviously took advantage of the situation, but doesn't anyone in a situation like that?
Well, there is a tendency to do that. I'm glad Kevin brought this up, because it does kind of cheapen the move a little bit. If you're not going to trot that out against the top teams, then,
But it was also the first of its
like
kind.
If you're only going to do that against Buffalo when you've got a comfortable lead, I mean, that's it. I'll tell you, if I was on the other side of the equation there, I'd be pretty pissed off with that too.
It also wasn't like a blowout lead, though. It was a fairly close game at the time. So, like, I personally don't see a whole lot wrong with it, and especially since it was precedent breaking. Like, that move hadn't been done in the NHL before. So
I just think if you're not afraid to try it in all situations, it's fair game for me.
Yeah, I know.
Zegras tried to do the lacrosse goal in Game 1 versus the Flames.
Yeah.
No, that's fair, but I think what Torts was trying to say is Bobby Orr. I need Don Taylor. I need your cane. If you're not going to use it anymore, give me your cane. But I mean, Bobby Orr used to race down the ice, blew by teams, would score goals, and keep his head down. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that they celebrated everything, but I understand I don't think Torts would reprimand him. I think Torts would have what I heard Torts say is he would have a conversation with him. And I think it's fair to converse when to do that and when not. I do see your point, though. I think, let's not dishonor and discourage the skill at all. And if he's willing to do it in other goals, in other situations, great. But at the other side of that is timing and stuff,
And the other reason why that question is valid is because, well, in Boston, if you do that, then you're probably getting run out of the building. Again, it goes back to a little bit of intimidation, and it's on the other team to make sure it doesn't happen. But you don't want to be embarrassed like that with a highlight reel goal that you're going to see over and over for years to come. Don't let it happen. Be better defensively. It's that simple.
Yes.
I think that's. I'm sure that we will not be popular within podcasting world with our opinions on that. But oh well,
we don't care.
What I
They're
appreciate,
my
though,
opinions. Deal with it.
Yeah. No, we're not being that outrageous here.
No, I don't think so, and I don't think so, and I think Torts is, and what's good about Torts is he's willing to bring. He has good on Torts to having the guts to say something that people are not wanting to hear, even about Connor McDavid. That was a lot of people were really upset about that, but there are some.
He was right.
You
on
may
that
disagree
one,
with. There was what's that?
He was right on that one, though.
He was absolutely. I 100% agree with him. Yep. At GordHowe09 is my Twitter. Just kidding. Just kidding. Speaking of the Oilers, let's touch on them before we go. They're, as we are on the slide of Alberta, the Flames are on a 4-game losing streak. The Edmonton Oilers are on a 5-game losing streak. Everything was going hunky-dory and very well. We talked to Graham Moseman a couple weeks ago. I think the plan was the Stanley Cup parade would start at West Edmonton Mall and then end at the Ledge. There would be a special cheer from Wayne Gretzky at some point in time. But now, Dave Tippett is sounding like there are some people questioning him. Graham brought up an interesting point that Ken Holland has not made a good trade since his tenure has started in Edmonton. He's done some other things really well, but trading has not been one of his fortes. Is Tippett on the hot seat? Are the Oilers in trouble, or is just this part of the cycle and regress to the mean?
It's the latter there, Kevin. I know it's a 5-game losing streak, but the schedule's been a little tougher lately than it was for them when they started. They're still 16-10. There's I don't know, this idea that he's on the hot seat when they're 6 games above 500 is a bit much for me.
They came back down to earth. They didn't dig themselves a hole.
And they're missing the ageless wonder in Mike Smith.
Yeah, and that's probably where we should have felt like the regression was going to be the most apparent, right?
And I think they just got Darnell Nurse back as well. He was missing within an injury for a bit as well. So I think it's regression to me. It's too early to say. Tippett's on the hot seat. Who are you replacing him with? If he's on the hot seat, who are you replacing him with? Can't have Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah. No, Bruce, there
are you
he
bringing
is.
In Travis Reed?
Yeah.
And he'll take all the fun out of the Oilers hockey?
Yeah, I think that this, I'll say this about both the Flames and the Oilers, and maybe this will be more relevant for the Oilers. I kind of think this. I wonder if this losing streak turns out to be a good thing for them in some ways. Not that losing's great, but this team. This is an organization. They had no adversity last year in the North Division. It was so easy for them, and then when it got hard, and you can. I know that all the Oiler fans are going to talk about Connor McDavid not getting enough penalties drawn, and my God, it was so physical, and
they
all of
weren't
this.
Saying that during the playoffs, Kevin. They weren't saying that during the playoffs.
Okay.
They know better than that. Shouldn't have been 4-0 with that team they had.
Yep. No, but they didn't. They never went through any adversity. It was so easy for them, and they need. This is it, and this is where. Just to bring it back to Torts, this is where Torts is right. McDavid and Draisaitl, and until this is, I feel like the Edmonton Oilers have competed very well for the Art Ross Trophy over the years, and someone needs to inform that organization that it's about the Stanley Cup.
It's about the.
I don't know where to go with
As I said earlier, if you look at the majority of Stanley Cup winners, they win when they've got someone who is in. Top 10, top 5 of the Selke voting, if not top 3. Yeah. And when was the last time we could say that? The only time I think the Oilers were even close to that was it 2016 when they went on they took San Jose to Game 7 in the second round, and they were real close. And McDavid was playing better defensively than he has ever since. And he got
17. They beat San Jose in the first round and 6 in Anaheim. 7 games they lost.
They beat San Jose and lost to Anaheim. Yep. But ever since then, they haven't had that. They haven't had a forward who you can say, look, this is who you follow to play defensively.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be noted that back-to-back Stanley Cup. Was it three Stanley Cups now? Back-to-back for Patrick Maroon. Yes, one with St. Louis, two with Tampa Bay. Was on that 2017 Edmonton Oilers squad. No, the Oilers fans don't give him any credit, but I will.
Yeah,
he certainly helped.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's just that's where I think this might benefit the Oilers in some ways, because I think that they realize what they'll need. That adversity will help them going forward. And they've also didn't have Zach Hyman in their lineup, and I do think that's another huge loss for them.
Yeah, he's been great this year.
Yeah. Just want to quickly touch on the World Juniors as well, just quickly before we go. The team has been made. Connor Bedard joins the list of Sidney Crosby, Wayne Gretzky, Jason Spezza, Eric Lindros, Connor McDavid, and Jay Bouwmeester as a 16-year-old that made the team. I got to tell you, based on what we saw and we're seeing in Regina, I'm really surprised he had the camp that he did. It's good that he had the camp that he did. It's exciting, and good on him for making the team. But I honestly thought this would be an experience for him to get used to, and he would be the star next year. And good on him for proving me wrong.
It'll be interesting to see how much the coaching staff leans on him. We have seen in cases in the past where a 16-year-old, may be on the team, but still, when it gets down to the thick of it and trying to hold on to a narrow lead in a gold medal game or something like that, the coaches tend to lean on those 19-year-old players the most. So, anytime a 16-year-old can make Team Canada, it's very, very impressive, and you hope that they're up to the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through the lineup for the two games that they played against the U Sports, and I have no idea what the forward lines are going to be because they did not play the majority of their top players. Top forwards, but you've got the defense. Looks like they might be. I think we have three pairs for defense potentially. I think you could put together, and I know, Kevin, you're going to get into the fact that it's all left-handed defensemen, and I think that's a question that's interesting as well. But I'm not sure there was a right shot defenseman that you could legit say deserved it over the rest. But
there was only one in camp after Jack Thompson left, and that was Vincent Iorio. And if he didn't impress enough, then he didn't impress enough. Yeah,
but they played Donovan Sabrango and Olin Zeliger together in both games, and they also played Ryan O'Rourke and Lucas Cormier together in both games, and they didn't play either Owen Power or Caden Gooley in either of those games, and that could be a pair as well. That could be your number one pair.
That will be your number one pair. I think that they're going to be the 30-minute a night pair that you'll see a lot of them. By the way, a nice Oh, go ahead.
So I looked at that, and you've got Bedard, who's going to. I think he's probably going to be your 12th or 13th forward, playing a lot of power play minutes and not necessarily the tough minutes. But they got Cole Perfetti, Jake Neighbors, Mason McTavish, Dylan Genther, all who got regular season NHL games this year.
Yeah. We'll be discussing more World Juniors. I did a podcast with Adam Kurzenblack and Chris Roy from the Third Line pod previewing the World Junior camp and sort of the team, though we'll break that down as well. But let's leave it there, or else we end up going 9.5 hours. And Tyler, and some of us need to go to bed. Maybe, I don't know. I don't.
I know I'm feeling that way.
Yeah, but we do have a contest. Maybe Sean, just remind us of that. We didn't talk about it throughout. Sorry about that, but we had other things that we were going through. Sorry about my driving us. I didn't drive us into the ditch, at least.
Oh, that's good.
It's because we don't have Devin.
Yeah,
he's usually the guy that guides us into the ditch. We've got the pig and puck contest with the Pig and Duke here in Calgary. They've got two locations: 12th Ave and 12th Street Southwest, as well as 4th Ave and 4th Street Southwest. Go there, sign up for the Pig and Puck Club, and you can get entered into a draw to win tickets to the April 23rd game when Vancouver is in town. Who knows? Who knows where the Canucks will be at that point? But also you can get bonus entries by retweeting any of our podcast episodes, any of our pod clips, any of our game recaps to gain one entry, and you can also gain an extra 3 entries into that contest by DMing us the word of the week, which this week will be culture, because that is what we're changing in Vancouver. So the word of the week is culture. So yes, I know, Kev, you said that you're going to be making sure that the Greater Vancouver Canadians parents and coaches go visit the Pig and Duke.
Yes, I am. Head coached by Ryan Nugent Hopkins' brother Adam, by the way. They are in the match this week, Christmas, December 27th to the 3rd. The Greater Vancouver Canadians, who I call play-by-play games with, are at the Max. Will be at the Max Major tournament. Jamie Hakita, who was drafted by the Portland Winterhawks, will be playing. I think he should be playing. Grady Lenton, Kamloops Kelowna Rockets. And yeah, they're having a good year and should be interesting. You can catch that all on Hockey TV, by the way, if you can't go to the games.
Yeah, so yeah, Kevin is sending his all the hockey parents and coaches from the Greater Vancouver Canadians to the Pig and Duke, and you can send all your friends there as well. As I ramble on a little bit more, it's go support. It's I heard a ad on the radio, but talking about how it's been such a tough time for small businesses and especially the hospitality industry. Go support your local restaurant, your local pub, your local cafe, and we do that by partnering up with the Pig and Duke. And so, like I said, retweet any of our episodes, any of our pod clips, any of our game recaps to get one entry into the Pig and Puck contest, as well as DM us the word of the week. And this week it is culture to get 3 extra entries.
Sounds good.
And Kev, what are you up to these days? You've got some new stuff coming out and new ventures. Tell us what's up with you.
Oh, I've joined the Area 51 team. I'm covering the Kelowna Rockets for the Area 51 channel with them. So I'm covering the Blazers and the Rockets for the dub, the Rockets with the Area 51. Making sure I'm not confused right now. So yeah, it's interesting. They actually are doing very well in terms of site hits, in terms of the WHL. They're right now. They're, by the way, just to point out, they are looking for writers to cover the eastern part of the WHL, but they've got all the western teams covered. So if you're interested and writing is something that you're interested in, maybe message me. I'll set you up with the boss, and you guys can figure things out from there. But that is a new venture. Is there any other ventures I'm involved with? Does someone need?
Tyler's on mute.
Tyler, you're on mute.
I am. Okay, I just want to say it here for everybody because I'm proud of you with your work doing traffic. I know it's not the most glamorous job in radio, but you and I are now 2 people on this show that have been heard on CKNW AM 980 in Vancouver, and it's that's cool. It was cool to hear that news. So congratulations on that as well, Kevin. Hope we keep hearing you some more on that legacy station.
Yes.
Because the traffic's pretty frequent on there at certain times of day.
Yes, it is actually. Yeah, it's
10 minutes on the 4 still. Is that what they're doing during drive time?
Yeah, it's pretty. It's 10. Yeah. Well,
you're on so many stations you can't even keep track of them. Probably.
Yeah, I'm on 4 stations, so it's like wait, which one? Yeah. It's fun.
Have you gotten them confused yet? Because I know some of the Trish Jewisons and the Amber Belzers who are quite famous in Vancouver. They're from time to time they get confused whether they're on Global or on AM 730 or what they're doing. And I just admire them for being able to juggle all that. And fly in a helicopter and deliver the traffic in a smooth
Well,
manner.
it's fortunate I'm not on the chopper yet, so it's easy for me to stick to the script and just. My problem isn't the script.
I can't wait for the day they have you up in the chopper with your headphones on and all that.
Oh, I've like Les Nessman. You know, I'm gonna toss turkeys in Vancouver.
When that happens, I'm making sure I'm getting that recorded and
yes,
for
yes,
posterity's sake.
Oh,
Yes.
good God! If Belzner hears this, she's probably gonna be like, "No, no."
Anyways, good stuff, Kev.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
add on to Tyler, though, I just want to add that, with the fact that you're getting your foot further into the media door, we are definitely proud of you, and we encourage you to keep on keeping on.
Yes, just save a little energy for us though on Monday nights, okay?
Did I not bring energy tonight?
No, you didn't. Just make sure it stays.
You're just poking a little fun.
Milan,
legs
Lucian of this
Don't
podcast.
overthink this, Kevin.
Jeez. I'm the
No.
Connor Garland of this podcast, except I shoot left. No, I don't.
That's
Take the compliment and run.
Yes.
Speaking of that, let's run now, or else we're going to get in more trouble. How do we follow each other?
I am Bearded Conduct 03 on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter at tnoble, TNOBLE.
I am at Schneids on most social media.
Devin, who we do miss dearly. Who is he again on our podcast? He's the...
What do we call him? I can't remember. He's the shit disturber. He's the chaos.
He's the Bruce Boudreau of our podcast, actually.
Oh, no, he's the chaos giraffe.
Yeah, he's the
Yes.
He's our Tyler
At
Myers.
How09.
Jordan Howe09 on Twitter.
Yes.
I am KEVOLE, podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. We will have our daily news pack again tomorrow. I try to get it out 3 or 4 o'clock Pacific. And keep an eye out for everything. We'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.